The United States Department of Justice just did something unexpected. It backed Elon Musk's xAI against the NAACP in a massive pollution lawsuit. Now here's what makes this wild. The government is defending the company's data centers against claims that they are poisoning local communities with emissions and environmental damage. This isn't a tech story, it's a collision between AI growth, environmental justice, and government power, and the outcome will shape how all the megascale AI companies build their infrastructure going forward. xAI's ambitions are staggering. The company's planning to build what they call Colossus, this absurdly powerful AI computer with over 100,000 GPS chips. That's not hyperbole, it genuinely requires staggering amounts of electricity, water for cooling, and ongoing infrastructure. But that power has to come from somewhere, and it comes with a cost to the environment and to people living nearby. The NAACP lawsuit argues that xAI's data centers are creating pollution that disproportionately affects low-income and minority communities, the exact communities that have historically borne the burden of industrial pollution. The Justice Department stepping in to defend xAI signals something significant about how the government views AI infrastructure. It's saying, even if data centers cause environmental damage, the national interest in AI dominance may outweigh local environmental concerns. That's a consequential decision, and it could reshape everything about how and where AI companies build next. So who's suing? The NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, has been fighting environmental injustice for decades. They're not anti-technology, they are pro-community. What they are saying is that xAI is planning to build massive data centers in places where low-income communities already breathe dirtier air and drink water that's been neglected. That's not a new pattern. Throughout history, polluting industries get built near black and minority neighborhoods because those communities have less political power to fight back. And that's exactly what the NAACP is fighting against. Now, xAI itself was founded by Elon Musk. Yes, that Elon Musk, as a rival to OpenAI and ChatGPT. The company's building what they call Colossus, this absurdly powerful AI computer with over 100,000 GPS chips. That's not hyperbole. It genuinely requires staggering amounts of electricity, water for cooling, and ongoing infrastructure. The pollution concern isn't about whether data centers use energy. Of course they do. The issue is where they are built and who bears the environmental cost. A billionaire gets to build cutting-edge technology. Local residents get respiratory problems, contaminated water, and power grid strain. The lawsuit specifically challenges whether the Environmental Protection Agency properly reviewed the impacts before approving the project. It's a legal fight about whether the government actually protected communities before saying yes to xAI's plans. Let's dig into what the pollution actually looks like. Data centers are furnaces. To run 100,000 GPS chips computing at full speed, you need colossal amounts of electricity, megawatts, the kind of power small towns use. All that electricity comes from a grid that includes coal and natural gas power plants. When you fire up Colossus, you're creating demand for more fossil fuel burn. That electricity generates heat, so much heat that data centers need continuous cooling. Cooling a massive data center means pumping tens of millions of gallons of water per day through the system. That water comes from local sources, rivers, aquifers, municipal supplies. In drought-stressed regions or communities that already struggle with water access, a data center becomes a water vampire. Even after cooling, data centers exhale hot air back into the environment. When that heat concentrates in a residential neighborhood, it creates an urban heat island effect. The local temperature climbs, air conditioning demand spikes. But the damage doesn't stop there. Industrial sites produce noise pollution, truck traffic, and electromagnetic interference. For nearby residents, a massive data center isn't just an environmental problem, it's a quality-of-life crisis. Historically, those sites get built in places where people have the least ability to say no. So here's where it gets complicated. The real-world impact is impossible to ignore. When data centers operate at scale, the environmental footprint becomes massive. xAI's Colossus data center is being built in Memphis, Tennessee, and the NAACP's concern isn't theoretical. Memphis has a significant black population, neighborhoods with pre-existing air quality issues, and a history of environmental injustice. The city's already dealing with industrial pollution from other sources. Adding a gargantuan data center that demands megawatts of electricity and millions of gallons of water isn't a small thing. It's a concentrated punch to an already vulnerable community. But xAI isn't alone in this challenge. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are all building massive data centers because AI training requires staggering computational power. Amazon's data centers in Virginia consumed so much water in drought conditions that local communities raised concerns. Google's facilities in the United States use more water than entire cities. When you're running models with billions of parameters, doing inference trillions of times per day, the physical cost is unavoidable. The difference is scale and location. Big tech companies have resources and can sometimes absorb environmental costs or invest in mitigation. But xAI's Colossus is new, it's enormous, and it's in a community that deserves to have its voice heard before the bulldozers arrive. Here's what makes the government's decision so significant. It's setting a precedent. When the Justice Department defends xAI against environmental concerns, it's essentially saying, we'll prioritize AI development over traditional environmental protections. That's a change in how government thinks about technological progress. Compare this to how other industries are treated. When oil companies want to build pipelines, they face environmental reviews, community pushback, sometimes decade-long legal battles. But AI is newer. It's tied to national competitiveness with China, and there's this perception that we can't afford to slow down. So the government's choice to back xAI suggests AI infrastructure gets special treatment. Now, to be fair, data centers aren't oil spills. They don't leak carcinogens into drinking water. But their collective impact is real: energy consumption, water depletion, waste heat, and the very real environmental justice question of where these facilities get built. The irony is sharp. AI companies like OpenAI and Google talk constantly about responsible AI, about ethics and safety. But when a company actually gets sued for irresponsible environmental practices, the government steps in to defend the polluter instead of the community. It sends a message that corporate expansion matters more than neighborhood protection. This case will likely determine whether that's the new normal or whether communities finally get a real voice. So what does the Justice Department defending xAI mean in practice? First, it suggests the government values AI development higher than environmental protections. If the DOJ wins, it weakens the NAACP's legal standing and makes it harder for communities to challenge future data center projects. There's something deeper happening too. This is about who decides where industrial infrastructure goes. Environmental justice has been a core principle for decades. If you build something with negative impacts, you can't dump it on communities with the least political power. The DOJ taking xAI's side essentially argues AI development supersedes that principle. This could reshape how companies approach infrastructure planning. Instead of building in suburbs with environmental resources, they might view less powerful communities as preferable locations, faster approvals, lower resistance, government backing. That's troubling. There's also the national security angle the government isn't saying directly, but is definitely thinking. China's investing heavily in AI. The United States wants technological dominance. A billionaire building the world's most powerful AI computer is seen as a strategic asset. From that perspective, environmental concerns seem small compared to geopolitical competition. But that calculus ignores the people who'd breathe the polluted air. When AI development and environmental justice collide, which wins? Based on this case, AI wins, your neighborhood loses. Here's what you need to understand about this case, and it's not just about Memphis or xAI. This is a decision point for how the country manages the collision between two things we want: advanced AI technology and healthy communities. The lawsuit will probably drag through courts for years. The NAACP has strong arguments about environmental justice and proper regulatory review. But the DOJ's involvement changes the math because it signals government support for xAI's project. If you're thinking about how this affects you, here's the framework. First, recognize that AI companies need infrastructure. Data centers aren't theoretical, They are physical, real, and they require resources. Second, understand that location matters enormously. Building in wealthier, whiter neighborhoods would face more legal resistance, more protests, more delays. Building in Memphis is faster and cheaper. That's not accidental. It's how industrial sites get cited historically. Third, ask yourself whose voice should matter in these decisions. Should it be just the company, the government, engineers, and economists, or should it include the people who actually live there? The case you're watching essentially determines that answer. And finally, watch the precedent this sets. If the government backs corporations over communities this time, expect AI companies to follow the same playbook again and again. Expect your own city to get targeted if it's less politically powerful. So here's the bottom line. The battle over xAI's data center in Memphis is about way more than one company or one city. It's a test case for how America balances technological progress with environmental justice. Right now, the government sided with the billionaire building the AI computer over the community breathing polluted air. But this case is ongoing. The NAACP isn't backing down, and courts will ultimately decide. What happens next matters for every city in America. If courts support communities, expect a wave of lawsuits against every major tech company's data center projects. If they side with the DOJ and xAI, data centers concentrate in vulnerable communities where resistance is lowest. The stakes are high. We are deciding whether AI development happens at any cost or whether we build it responsibly. There's no neutral ground. The polluting infrastructure gets built somewhere. The question is where and whose burden. The Memphis case affects whether your neighborhood's future is decided by your community or a company wanting speed over community. That's why this story matters. Follow for daily AI news to watch how this case unfolds and shapes the future of AI infrastructure.